Before Microsoft became the titan of modern technology, before Windows powered the world, before Bill Gates became one of the richest men alive, there was a moment, small, quiet, almost invisible, that would plant the seed for one of the biggest failures in tech history. Bill Gates grew up fascinated by patterns. While other kids ran through Seattle rain puddles, Bill ran lines of code through his mind. He wasn't just smart, he was relentlessly curious, obsessively driven, and aggressively competitive. At 13, while most teenagers were learning to talk to girls, Bill was learning to talk to machines. He and Paul Allen spent countless nights surrounded by the sound of humming processors, scribbling ideas on yellow pages, believing they could change the world. And they did. When Microsoft launched, it wasn't a company. It was a revolution disguised in code. The world saw a small team creating software. Bill saw an empire forming, one line at a time. By his early 30s, Gates was not just successful, he was the face of personal computing. Microsoft's products were everywhere. Offices, schools, homes, and eventually, every pocket on Earth. But here's the truth that the world didn't know. In the middle of Gates' success, a historic failure was brewing beneath the surface. A mistake born from confidence, then pride, then blindness. See, Gates believed deeply in something. If you owned the operating system, you owned the future. He was right, but he was also wrong. Disastrously wrong. Because while Microsoft dominated desktops, the world was quietly shifting towards something new. Something Bill saw, but underestimated. A small device that fit in your hand. A future beyond the keyboard. A battlefield that Microsoft believed would be theirs automatically. That device was the smartphone, and the failure Gates was about to make would cost Microsoft over $10 billion and nearly destroy decades of momentum. But failures rarely walk in loud. Sometimes they slip in quietly, hiding behind success, waiting to strike. And for Bill Gates, that moment was coming faster than anyone at Microsoft expected. The story of this failure doesn't begin with disaster. It begins with confidence, the kind only billionaires and visionaries can afford. A confidence that blinds, a confidence that miscalculates, confidence that transforms into the costliest mistake of a legendary career. And yet, this same failure would reshape Microsoft, reshape Bill Gates, reshape his destiny, and ultimately turn him into something far greater than a tech founder. It would turn him into a leader the world never saw coming. This is how the failure began. By the early 2000s, Microsoft stood at the peak of the digital mountain. Windows was unstoppable, Office was untouchable, and Bill Gates, he was the emperor of software, the architect of the digital age. But beneath that mountain of triumph was a tremor named mobile technology. Microsoft executives believed mobile computing was just a tiny extension of Windows, a pocket-sized toy, nothing worth panicking over. After all, they had billions in revenue, the world's best engineers, and a monopoly-level hold on global computing. What could possibly dethrone them? Well, one phone could, but not yet. Before Apple, before Android, before the storm that would rewrite history, Microsoft actually had a head start. They launched Windows Mobile, a clunky but functional mobile OS. It wasn't beautiful, it wasn't fast, it wasn't user-friendly, but it worked. And this is where the fatal mistake began. See, Microsoft had power, but power breeds comfort. Comfort breeds arrogance, and arrogance blinds giants. While Bill Gates was stepping down from day-to-day operations, Steve Ballmer, his loud, confident, high-energy successor, laughed on national television at Apple's new invention, the iPhone. A joke, he said. Overpriced, no keyboard. Ridiculous. Microsoft's biggest competitor was dismissed with a grin and a shrug. Meanwhile, Bill watched from a distance, his instincts whispering something different. He understood code. He understood platforms. He understood how fast consumers change their loyalty when magic happens in their hands. He knew the smartphone wouldn't be a tiny extension of Windows. It would be the future of computing. But he wasn't in control anymore. He'd stepped back. The company he built was now driven by momentum instead of vision, and that momentum was headed straight toward disaster. Android surged ahead. Apple rewrote the rules. Developers abandoned Microsoft's mobile ecosystem. Consumers mocked Windows phones, and the world moved on without them. Microsoft's once promising mobile division slowly transformed into a massive burning pile of cash. $10 billion gone, decades of opportunity lost, and a humiliating blow to the company's identity. Bill Gates later admitted openly, "My biggest mistake was failing to lead Microsoft into the smartphone revolution." But what people often forget is this. Behind that mistake was a man watching his empire trip over its own success. A man who knew exactly what had gone wrong. A man who was about to reinvent everything, starting with himself. Because for Bill Gates, failure wasn't the end. It was the turning point. The mobile disaster didn't just cost Microsoft money. It cost them reputation. It cost them dominance. And it pushed Bill Gates into a rare emotional space for a billionaire of his stature: humility. When you're on top for too long, the world expects perfection. But billionaires aren't loved for being perfect. They're loved for rising after the fall. Bill Gates had stepped away from the throne to focus on philanthropy, but the mobile failure pulled him back into reflection. He admitted publicly that Microsoft missed the biggest opportunity of the era. But privately, he wrestled with something deeper. He didn't fail because he lacked intelligence. He failed because he trusted the wrong instincts, delegated at the wrong moment, and underestimated how fast technology evolves. But here's the part that transformed him. He refused to let the failure define him. Instead, he let it reshape him. He began to see the world differently, less through code, more through humanity. Gates pivoted from tech battles to global battles: disease, poverty, sanitation, climate, education. Failures change people in two ways. They either break them or broaden them. For Gates, it did the latter. He poured billions into vaccines. He funded clean water systems. He visited remote villages personally. He studied global trends the way he once studied software. He evolved from being the world's most famous tech founder to the world's most powerful humanitarian. The smartphone war he lost, it freed him to fight wars that actually mattered. Microsoft carried scars from the mobile disaster. Gates carried lessons. Lessons that would eventually help Microsoft rise again, stronger, sharper, and humbler. But first, something unexpected needed to happen. A new leader had to step in. A new era had to begin. A new Microsoft had to be born from the ashes of the smartphone failure. And that leader was Satya Nadella. When Satya Nadella took over Microsoft, the company was wounded, once feared, now mocked, once unstoppable, now stumbling. The mobile disaster was still fresh. Investors doubted them. The tech world moved on. But Nadella did something genius. He embraced the failure Gates had acknowledged. Rather than hide the wound, he used it to redirect the company. Cloud computing, AI, enterprise software, collaboration tools, while the world obsessed over phones. Microsoft quietly built the infrastructure that powers the internet itself. And Bill Gates? He watched the comeback with pride. He served as mentor, as advisor, as the wise architect whose blueprint had been updated, not erased. Microsoft went from the company that failed in mobile to a trillion-dollar cloud empire, the AI leader of the modern era, a titan stronger than ever, a company that learned to adapt instead of dominate. Gates said it best: success is a lousy teacher. It makes smart people think they can't lose. Failure taught Microsoft to evolve, and it taught Bill something too, that even the greatest billionaire on earth is still human. In the end, the smartphone disaster didn't define Bill Gates. It refined him. It stripped away the illusion of invincibility. It forced him to rethink leadership. It reshaped his legacy from tech mogul to global problem solver. Bill Gates' biggest failure became the reason he transformed into the billionaire philanthropist millions respect today. He traded rivalry for responsibility, hardware battles for humanitarian victories, profits for purpose. And Microsoft? It rose from the ashes of that failure into a new golden age. Sometimes losing the wrong battle helps you win the right war. And here's your lesson. You will fail. You will miscalculate. You will lose things you worked hard for. But failure in the right hands becomes evolution. Bill Gates didn't stay the GOAT because he never failed. He stayed the GOAT because he learned faster than he lost. And if you want more stories like this, stories that help you think like billionaires, rebuild from setbacks, and rise stronger after every mistake, then you need to subscribe to my channel right now. Subscribe if you want stories that make you smarter. Subscribe if you want wisdom billionaires learned the hard way. Subscribe if you're building something bigger than yourself. Subscribe because your future self will thank you for it. This is just the beginning. There are hundreds of billionaire lessons coming, and you don't want to miss the next one. Hit subscribe and continue your path to billions.